More headlines now from Smerconish.com. I'm still not sure what we're calling this. I only know that we're going to keep doing it because people seem to like it. We enjoy it. And there's news out there actually beyond Ukraine that warrants our attention and is covered at Smerconish.com and in the daily newsletter.
Well, people seem to like it, and fear not, because now we have over 1,000 suggestions on Facebook about what people should call it. And you made the point yesterday. I saw that you were going through on your Facebook page and making comments, and you said the really impressive thing is the lack of overlap. So there are a lot of suggestions.
Yeah, in other words, like 1,000 people. And by the way, thank you for offering suggestions as to what to call this.
Some had multiple suggestions.
Oh, I noticed. But what was really amazing to me, as I said, is the lack of overlap. I mean, it's like there really are 1,000 people and 1,000 different suggestions. I found myself being partial to those that worked purple into the title, but
I noticed that.
I'm not wedded to anything.
All right.
I'm not wedded to anything.
We will get to that.
And by the way, TC, this is legit. Like, we need a name for this because newsletter cast isn't working for me.
It's just too clunky. It's too long. It's too clunky.
Right.
I liked it at the beginning because it is what it is. That is what you're doing.
Yeah.
But right now we've become, when people, like a family gets a puppy and all the kids want to name it something different, and so they end up not naming the puppy for 2 weeks. That's where we are now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Are we?
Yeah. My neighbors, I'm looking at you. Right.
All I know is that with the birth of son number 2, my wife refused to leave the hospital until the naming was secure because we were playing with a couple of different names, and I wanted to just go home, obviously with her and with our son. And she said she would not. She would not.
Nice to know that you weren't going to leave them there.
She would not leave until the name was secure. I think she said that the hospital wouldn't let us leave until the name was secure, which makes sense. Anyway,
does it?
We will get the name for this. Truth is, I mean, at the end of the program, we love running through the other news of the day that is not front page that I talk about in the first hour or the second hour. Right. Today at Smerconish.com, and all these headlines are posted at the website and are in the daily newsletter. Of course, we are Ukraine heavy, and so too the survey results. Yesterday, 10,329 votes on this. Should media outlets show Ukraine's most graphic images despite the risk that consumers might stop viewing the news? It was decisive. 87.99% said yes, the no's were 12%. Today's survey question: is wall-to-wall coverage of the war in Ukraine due more to the race of the combatants, meaning is it because these are white people? These are Europeans fighting among themselves? Or is it the risk of nuclear war? If you haven't paid attention to this and you wonder why I'm talking about it, the link that's posted comes from WHYY. It says this. That's an NPR affiliate in Philadelphia. It's a fact of modern life that some wars get more attention than others. And Russia's invasion of Ukraine has captured the public's attention in the West in a way that other recent wars, think Yemen and Ethiopia, simply haven't. Why is that the case? Well, I give you a variety of perspectives. Actually, WHYY does. For example, Christopher Blattman is an economist at the University of Chicago, author of Why We Fight. And he says it's the risk of potential global conflagration. It's not the race of the folks who are involved. A different opinion offered by a writer in London, Magdalene Abraha, has many families and family members and friends and relatives in Ethiopia, saying that it's not that simple. I thought that Fareed Zakaria, in discussing this with Don Lemon, had a pretty straightforward and take that made sense. He said, quote, "It's not, to put it directly to people who think about this and they say, why Ukrainians why do we pay so much attention? I'm reading this literally. Is it just because they're white?" Fareed Zakaria says, no, it's not because Ukrainians are white or European. It's because their aggressor, their invader, is a nuclear-armed superpower. That's the danger. I think Fareed has it right, but vote at Smerconish.com and tell me what you think. The Associated Press is another story at Smerconish.com today, noting that the exodus of refugees from Ukraine has now hit the 2 million milestone. Something else that I thought was interesting, I had a guest, TC, you may remember 2 or 3 weeks ago, named Sam Gregory, from a group called Witness. They're a human rights organization. He was the guy who came on and talked about how easy it is to gin up, not his words, mine, fake videos and make them look real.
Was that when you played the Tom Cruise and
Paris Hilton?
Paris Hilton.
Yeah,
right.
and people had to tell
breakfast.
me that it was Paris Hilton. I don't mean because she was fake or real, but I just knew I should know her, but I didn't know her.
I recognize her. How do I know her?
Right.
Maybe I went to school with her.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that
was crazy. The deep
Tom
fakes.
Cruise.
Deep fakes.
Yeah, well, listen, we did that segment without an eye toward Ukraine.
Right.
Today at my website, I linked to the BBC. As a matter of fact, early this morning, it was the #1 post at the BBC, worldwide audience, and it was about the number of fake videos about Ukraine. So be very careful about the information that you're receiving from Ukraine. I mean, this is now a rule generally, right? Check the source and make sure it's legit, because a lot of people are buying into the idea that you're not going to believe this, that there's been no Russian invasion of Ukraine. And it's because some of the videos, like there's a video, one of them that I watched has a guy speaking reporter style and a number of body bags behind him. And then you see one of them move. And so people are saying, oh my God, look at this. It's all fake. This isn't even really taking place. So read the BBC story. From NBC News, I've got an update on the proposal to send fighter jets to Ukraine, now hitting a logistical snag. The idea is that Ukraine needs fighter jets. Poland is willing to give theirs, which are Russian-made MiG fighters. They know how to fight them. The plan is that we would then backfill for Poland F-16 jets that we would send to Warsaw. The problem is we don't have a surplus of F-16s. I raised the question yesterday. I mean, at what point are we really in this? You know, if we are supplying the fighter jets directly or indirectly that are then bombing, say, that Russian convoy, which is still, trudging along outside of Kyiv, aren't we really in the war? When does Putin say, enough already, I'm now fighting NATO? The oil decision for the Biden administration, this is something that I've talked about here on POTUS and also on CNN. I went with the ABC coverage. Calls mounted on Monday for the U.S. to ban the import of Russian oil. But while President Biden's administration signaled a new openness to doing so, the president faced tough decisions of taking a step that would raise the price Americans are paying at the gas pump. That's part of the dynamic. Vice President Kamala Harris, in sort of an awkward way, talked about the impact this is going to have on electric vehicle purchases. I happen to agree with that, but not the way in which she said it. I've come to realize in speaking to experts and in also just reading in on the situation that part of the issue here is that we can do without the Russian oil. Yes, our prices will be driven higher. We can do without it much more easily than our European allies. They are dependent, particularly Germany. And I think what's really going on here is a political concern at home. The president doesn't want to add to the price at the pump, but also doesn't want to leave our allies holding the bag, because up until now, he's had this strategy of imposing sanctions in lockstep with European nations. So this would be a deviation from that. An NPR PBS NewsHour Marist survey, also in today's newsletter at Smerconish.com, showing a bump for the president, both in terms of his handling of the situation in Ukraine and his overall job approval. A majority of Americans, 52%, approve of how President Biden is handling the situation in Ukraine. That's up from 34% last week. President Biden's overall approval rating is at up 8 points at now 47%, still underwater, but he had been at 39. So as is often the case, and I wondered aloud whether there would be some rallying around the flag, that has happened so far with regard to President Biden. Meanwhile, speaking of the presidency, interesting that today's the day that former Attorney General Bill Barr's book is released, getting a lot of attention. He had a sit down with Lester Holt. It caused former President Trump to send a letter to Lester Holt that is posted in the newsletter today at Smerconish.com. Classic Trump stuff with regard to Barr as he seeks to denigrate him. Quote, this is now Trump writing to Lester Holt. speaking about his former attorney general, quote, "He was slow, lethargic, and I realized early on that he never had what it takes to make a great attorney general. He became virtually worthless to law and order on election integrity. They broke him. This is like one of Trump's lines, like a dog. Quote, "They broke him just like a trainer breaks a horse." Barr's lack of energy, drive, and curiosity led me to say things to him that should never have been necessary, but he was so lazy and cowardly, he just never quite understood what was going on. Okay, so that's your Ukraine, that's part of your Ukraine and political news, all posted at the website and in the newsletter. Here's what I really have been eager to talk to you about. I never thought that I would say this, but the United States has released the man who would have been the 20th hijacker aboard Flight 93, that which crashed in Western Pennsylvania and only had 4 aboard in comparison to the other 3 flights on September 11 that had 5 terrorists. His name is Mohammed al-Qattani. I know this story well. I literally wrote a book called Instinct, The Man Who Stopped the 20th Hijacker. I think it's out of print. You can't even get it. Could probably get it for $3 on Amazon if you could find it. My purpose is not to sell books, but this is the story of Jose Melendez-Perez, which for 20 years I've told on radio. It's unbelievable. Jose Melendez-Perez, the very short version is that he was working as an immigration and naturalization agent, INS agent, before they became CPD. Customs and Border Patrol, CBP. There we go. Jose Melendez-Perez, a month before September 11, so it's August 4, 2001, is working in secondary screening. A Saudi national comes off a flight from the UK. He's sent to secondary screening where Jose questions him, not because of any terror threat, but because the guy hadn't properly filled out his paperwork. But Jose Melendez-Perez now undertakes this questioning that raises his suspicion, raises his instinct about the guy that he's now interviewing, so much so that Jose would later tell the 9/11 Commission, quote, "He just gave me the creeps." Jose thought that he was a malified. I'd never heard that word before, but he thought he was a no-goodnik. How's that? And he turned him around and prevented him from coming into the United States. A month later was September 11. 3 months later, Mohammed al-Qattani, the man who was stopped from coming in at Guantanamo, was captured at Tora Bora. And now, because of the personal markers that had been taken from Jose, fingerprints, identification information, a match was made. And American intelligence put together the fact that, hey, a guy we just captured literally on the battlefield fighting with bin Laden at Tora Bora. This is now December of 2001. He was attempting to get into the United States at the Orlando International Airport on August 4 of 2001. Oh, guess what else? We know that Mohammed Atta, the 9/11 ringleader, was at the airport that day. They put all the pieces together and they figure out Mohammed Atta was at the airport to pick up this man, Mohammed al-Qattani, because he'd have been the 20th hijacker on Flight 93. And so the argument goes that if Jose Melendez-Perez had not stopped him, he'd have gotten into the country, been aboard Flight 93, the one where the passengers revolted, and that plane crashed going 600 miles an hour upside down into an abandoned strip area in western Pennsylvania, Shanksville. But maybe if the terrorists had one more muscle aboard, they could have kept the plane in the air and reached the Capitol or the White House. Jose Melendez-Perez arguably prevented a strike on Washington. And it's even more than that, because after bin Laden was killed, something that came to light, remember how we tracked him like breadcrumbs through a courier? One of the ways that our intelligence figured out the courier was from Mohammed al-Qattani. Now, you're listening to this and you're saying, Michael, Jesus, that's a hell of a story. How come the 20th hijacker, Mohammed al-Qattani, was just sent back to Saudi Arabia? Well, the New York Times story, Carol Rosenberg has had, I think, the best reporting on this, lays it all out. It's in my newsletter. It's posted at Smerconish.com. The gist of it is that Mohammed al-Qattani is a mental health case. Here's the lead of the story. The Biden administration on Monday repatriated to Saudi Arabia for mental health care a prisoner who had been tortured so badly by U.S. interrogators that he was ruled ineligible for trial as the suspected would-be 20th hijacker on September 11. The prisoner, Mohammed al-Qattani, is in his 40s. He's the second to be transferred from the wartime prison under this administration. He spent 20 years at Gitmo. They flew him out on Sunday. They said that he had significant mental health issues before ever attempting to come to the United States, that the torture compounded it, that they never could have tried him, that the guy is really just a basket case. And so Mohammed al-Qattani has been sent back to Saudi Arabia. I cannot believe it. When I wrote this book, if you said to me someday we're going to voluntarily send him home, I would never have believed it. Just two more legal matters. Again, there's a lot of good stuff at Smerconish.com and in the newsletter today that because of all the Ukraine information, I haven't had a chance to really go through. But two that I want to point out. Number one, Bill Cosby's case. The Supreme Court of the United States yesterday upheld a ruling from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which had overturned Cosby's conviction. I'm the least surprised about any of this. The Supreme Court accepted what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court had determined, which was that there was a promise that had been struck with the then district attorney. And the then district attorney said to Bill Cosby that he wouldn't be prosecuted, thereby opening the door for Cosby to have to give testimony at a civil deposition. And later, it was that civil deposition testimony that was used to convict him. It troubled me at the time, and I've said so consistently. I'm not surprised about the ultimate ending of this case, as disappointing as I know that it is to Cosby's victim, Andrea Constad, and others who were supportive of her in the so-called Me Too environment. And finally, San Francisco, Chesa Boudin is the district attorney. He was my guest on CNN recently, talking about how victims of sexual assault have their DNA taken so as to be able to distinguish their DNA from an attacker's DNA. It has recently come to light that in San Francisco, the DNA of the victims has been used in certain instances to convict those victims of other crimes. So there was a felony property, I'm doing this from memory, but I'm pretty secure in my recollection, felony property theft case where they prosecuted or were prosecuting a woman, and then they realized, hey, the reason we know or have her DNA is because she'd been previously raped. Wow, what do you do? Like, do you use a rape victim's DNA to prosecute? The easy case, I think, is property. You say, well, you're not going to do that to prosecute her for property theft. That's outrageous. What if you found out that someone who reports a sexual assault was a murderer? Or because of the use of DNA, that the brother of the rape victim, because the DNA is the same markers, are you now going to say, well, it would be improper to use that DNA? Apparently, they're still using DNA. Look at the coverage that I had at Smerconish.com today. There's a lot of great content there. I know we're spending a lot of time on Ukraine. I'm not apologetic about it. It's important, but there's a lot else going on in the world, and I think it's, TC, well covered in the newsletter.
For sure. And the newsletter comes out every day. It's also on the website. Tell your friends to sign up. We just can't talk about it enough because everyone I know.
What do we call it?
Well, that's the question. But no, we know what we call that. That's the Smerconish.com newsletter. We're secure on that. What do we call this? That's the question. And, I'm looking at the suggestions on Facebook because we have a post you asked, you solicited. Someone named Michael Smerconish put together a whole bunch of purple and suggested the purple pages.
What do you think of that?
What is your opinion on that?
What do you think of the purple pages?
I don't think it indicates enough what it is. I don't think it says enough what it is. I like the purple, but I'm not sold on that.
Okay, imagine me sitting
I'm not
here.
in charge, but I'm not sold on that.
Imagine me sitting. It's a benevolent dictatorship.
Exactly.
Imagine me sitting here and saying, TC, time for the purple pages.
It's like one-eyed, one-horned flying purple people eater.
I have no idea what that means, but I'm taking away that you don't like it.
I'm just saying.
What else?
Steve says the country's newsstand. Arnie says straight talk with Michael Smerconish. Matt says dropping the mic. Bill Roswell. Hi, Roz.
Hey, Roz.
Yeah, says Michael Smerconish, riff and read what we used to do with old teletype stories. Michael, could we do the click, 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 click,
Of
click?
KYW?
Yes, exactly.
Well, I don't think they use it anymore. Maybe we can use it.
We can bring it
By
back.
the way, Roz probably has it on tape, so you should ask him.
Of course he does. Linda says the midstream. Mid, like the middle. A lot of people are playing off middle.
Yeah.
The midstream.
Right.
Blake, you're not liking any of these, are you?
No, I like them all. It's just not like something's not set
Clicking.
a light bulb off in my head yet.
But you like purple pages the best. You like the alliteration. I know you.
The purple pages.
Okay,
The purple pages.
here's some alliteration for you.
Purple paper.
The bald blurb.
Eh.
That was from Michael Zinni. Blake says news balance, your daily balance of news. News balance. Shara says Michael in the middle, unbiased news for the independent thinker. A lot of people.
Sounds like a TV show about a juvenile.
A lot of people keep going back to this. Angela says, you said it yourself, the Smerconish riff or the daily riff. You wrote in the write-up on Facebook, you wrote something about we riff daily. Okay, Susan wants to play off your other habits. How about news on tap?
News on tap.
Kind of like that one. Lisa says, reading through these, I like the middle lane.
The middle lane.
The middle lane.
But how, like if I understood how it's going to be actually utilized. So it's the last 20 minutes of the program,
right,
and we want to run through the headlines. We come back from a commercial break, and what will be said by one or the other of us?
You know what I keep going back to?
Yeah.
I keep going back old school. Headlines redefined.
Really?
Because
Headlines
it's like
redefined.
your take on the headlines. Someone yesterday said the 20. I like that. I know you're not going to get
Except I just probably got through 6.
I know that, but it's the idea
Headlines
that's where
redefined.
it's from.
Headlines redefined.
I think people are going, there's a lot of purple, there's a lot of mid, there's a lot of bald. People are trying to go for you.
If it's headlines redefined, I can see the logo, which would be in some purplish motif in our color scheme with the back of my head.
Right.
I like dead center.
I love dead center.
I love dead center.
Yeah.
TC, dead center now. TC, dead center. Let's do it.
Time for dead center.
TC, time for dead center.
Let's go.
And I put the sneakers right in front of me on my console. Right?
So just to make it clear.
Right. Holding it up.
Where are those sneakers?
People
are asking.
They're on a shelf at home.
Where are the studio shoes? Everyone wants to know.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Come on, no, there's more. No, you're right. Okay, TikTok.
Okay, do you have one that you really like?
No, that was it. Oh, Vicky, the bald truth.
I've seen that before. That was used somewhat.
For you?
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, a number of your suggestions over the years have been used by one or another radio station in association with my work. I never loved any of them. Headlines Redefined was pretty cool because Headlines Redefined implies, here's the headline, now I'm going to explain it to you or at least offer my take on it.
We got to come up with a better one.
Please keep your suggestions flowing on the Facebook page. Survey question at Smerconish.com today. Is wall-to-wall coverage of the war in Ukraine due more to the race of the combatants or the risk of nuclear war? See you tomorrow.